Well, let me bring in Mr. Oluwole. He has since joined us. He's a Director of Voter Information and Education for INEC. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mr. Uzi. Let me straight away ask you this. There are some politicians who are of the view that they are a little bit concerned because, for instance, at the end of the day, when voting has been completed, say, in a polling unit, if the party agents don't sign the result sheets, does that invalidate the result? Because some of them think, look, if whether we sign or not and the results are still valid and somebody does something untoward, then, as they say, we'll die here. They will not like that to happen. So what is the situation at the moment?
Well, the law is quite clear. If the question is with the party agent that he wants to sign or doesn't want to sign. So the fact that he does not sign does not in any way invalidate the results. We've had instances where somebody doesn't like the result, maybe expected to win in that polling unit, and they lost. And sometimes they go off in a huff, and they don't want to sign it. There's nothing we can do about it. But those who are willing to sign do sign the result sheets. The law is, the Electoral Act says so, and then we take it to the next stage of collation. At the collation stage, if he wants to sign, he can sign. If he wants to raise a protest, the collation officer will listen to whatever he has to say and then make a decision on it. If he's not satisfied with the collation officer's decision, there's the last person, the returning officer. The returning officer has the final word about whether a vote is valid or whether an election is okay. If it's okay, then he goes on and makes a return. And it's only a tribunal that can say he did the right or he did the wrong thing. So basically, whether he signs or he doesn't sign, the result will be taken and collated at every stage. And in addition, this is not in the law. We display the result sheet at every polling unit. So that one is not necessarily, doesn't have to be signed. If he wants to sign, fine, but we display it. So if anybody has objections, he can go to the collation center and raise those objections.
Let me ask you something that's still bugging my head, and perhaps a number of other people like me. How long will it take an average voter at the polling unit to vote? Seeing that you have to, first of all, what's that word? The CAV. Well, how long does it take one person to cast his vote from the point of entering the polling unit to the point of dropping it in the ballot box, on the average?
Well, it depends on how many people are actually in that particular polling unit. But if you get in there from the time that they attended to the first person that you meet who checks your card at the entry point to the polling unit, it should only take you a couple of minutes. Because first of all, your card is checked manually to see whether you are the bearer of that card, whether the bearer is the owner of that card, whether your photograph, your image represents what is on that PVC. Then you go to the next stage, who now checks with the card reader to read the chip in it and also to confirm with the biometrics whether you're actually the owner of that card. That ordinarily should not take a couple of minutes and capture your biometrics to ascertain that. And then to the next stage, which will take not more than 30 seconds, he searches the register. The register is arranged alphabetically. So using your surname, he'll check and then take your register and ink you a minute or two for that. And then you go into the cubicle to cast your vote. That's up to you, whether you take 5 minutes or you take 10 seconds. So, and most people who are going in, they already know who they're going to vote for. So we don't expect that to take a few seconds for you to do that. Then you roll up the ballot paper, come out in the open, and cast it. That doesn't take a minute. Okay,
I asked that against the backdrop of the fact that, well, part of the regulations that's been sent to us is that, okay, so suppose there is an issue with somebody's voter card or permanent voter card or whatever, that there has to be some checks, manual, electronic, and stuff like that. So what happens in that case? That's on the one hand. Secondly, while that one is going on, is it okay for other voting procedures to be going on while one person is being sorted? Is that going to happen?
Well, just as we don't do one at a time, we do a lot of things simultaneously. While somebody is doing the card reader to check for your card, another person is ahead of you, and his name is being checked up in the register, whether his name is on the register or not. So it's simultaneous. We don't, but the card reader generally is one, so because it's configured for that specific unit, one card reader. That's the only time you may have to wait, or when you're queuing and somebody's checking the card. The card either reads your card or doesn't read your card. And the reading of the card, which is 99% accurate, doesn't take time at all. It's 30 seconds and everything else. But what might take time is the capture of your biometrics, because if it doesn't capture the first finger or your thumb, it takes the second finger, or try the third finger, the fourth finger, like that. That can take. But if we see that it's not picking up your fingers for whatever reason, then you go ahead and they'll take your fingerprint into the register of voters, and you'll take your phone number. So that's it, basically. We can do several things at the same time.
Let me ask Mr. Chukwuemeka at this point, concerning the matter which I raised with Mr. Uzi about some politicians who think that, look, party agents signing and then the outcome of the results may be a challenge. Do you think that that's exaggerated in context of his response to the matter?
No, I don't think so. I think he's very correct. Sometimes there's a bit of mischief amongst party agents, sometimes when they compromise, and other times when they feel that if they do not sign, it will invalidate the result of the election, they decide not to sign. But I also think that what is important is that both the politicians who intend to occupy the seat of government and those who are already occupying the seat of government need to show some level of confidence on the state institutions. I think that most times politicians, especially when they are in opposition, they try as much as possible to overblow things that seemingly is not transparent. But I think that when they come into power, they now have confidence in the state institution, whether it's at the level of the security institutions or at the level of the election management body. But I also think that the second angle of it is also the message being passed by political leaders to their followers. If they have a posture that says the electoral process is going to be compromised, then it means that all their followers begin to assume that posture as well. But if you look at it critically, at no point in time in this particular election have we had specific issues that inform the positions of politicians about the professionalism of either INEC or the security institutions. And that, for me, is very unfortunate. But the other thing that is also happening is that people should also understand that the electoral process is being monitored and observed across board. And this includes the performance of INEC, it includes the performance of the electoral officials, it includes also the performance and the posture of the government in power. And people should listen more to these independent observers. If you look at the kind of indicators we have used to monitor the preparation towards this electoral process, I think the first thing that people should acknowledge is the ability of INEC to communicate. If you are organizing a program as a civil society group, you will see a top INEC official come to address the concerns of citizens. I do not think that the political parties made use of those opportunities as much as they should do. Some of the issues and questions that you guys are raising over there, at the national briefing, which I represented my organization, INEC, they were very robust in terms of the explanations they provided, but they also allowed all manners of questions and clarifications on issues that could confuse anybody, including even those who raised issues about, because there is perception that even INEC changed the finger you can use to thumbprint. We had these politicians generate this information to undermine the process is what nobody understands. But we are also following the electoral process across the African continent, and it is not different from what politicians play on. So at every point in time, they will cook up a story, especially given that we have now a very speedy dissemination of information through the social media. They would disseminate such information to undermine the process. When they win, INEC, security agents have been the best. When they lose, then the burden is on INEC. But that does not mean that there are not a lot of concerns. They have not happened, but I think there are also things that both INEC and the security agencies need to pay attention to. The first one is people's perception about the likelihood of instrumentalization of security. Okay. In which case you see a lot of security, not necessarily to police or to provide security for the electoral process, but to also scare people so that they cannot have the confidence to vote. Okay, Mr. Chukwuemeka,
I need to bring it to Lagos at this point. Mr. Nanji, I know you may understand some part of that because at some point you did delve into politics. But when this may appear as though it's a double-edged, because number one, you may have people who legitimately feel that their party agents raise objections to signing the result sheet because they think that there are valid reasons for that. On the other hand, you also may have people who are just trying to be mischievous, saying, well, if I don't sign it, it will invalidate the result. So they're there to just be spoilers. How do you strike a balance?
Yes, listening to Mr. Saze, you would want to strike a balance that if you have a right to do something, you also have a right not to do it if it is not mandatory. You can waive your right. But for purposes of transparency, the electoral body should have a means of capturing that person's decision to waive. For example, I refuse to sign. He can even sign that refusal, but refuse to sign the result. You understand what I mean? Such that it becomes a willful act of the agent based on 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons. If they want to canvass it in court subsequently, that's a different thing. But they need to be seen that there was no deprivation of that individual, that political party's agent of the right to exercise the freedom to sign or not to sign. So it is the decision of the agent which is binding on the principal, like the party, because it is within his usual authority that he is there as an agent. But INEC, as an independent umpire, need to provide a means of proving to the whole world that it was not complicit in making this guy not to sign.
They do that in the tribunal.
Well, the tribunal is a later story.
Oh, you mean right there?
At that point, for example, there should be a form, for example, where the person says, I refuse to sign. Or a column, you say you don't want to sign, you can put in the column, if there is a way to contrive that column, I don't want to sign. Then it becomes clear. Or that the electoral officer on the spot will say in the report that this person refused to sign. Such that if the person says, I wanted to sign and he refused me from signing, then it's a question of evidence.
So perhaps the guidelines and the law are not necessarily helping.
Well, so we need to strike that balance, like you said, for transparency purposes.
Okay, we'll come back to that in just a moment. We need to go to break now. Don't go away.